Okay. So here we go. We are now going to dive in and really look at the second grade economic standards. Our understanding is that in second grade, we are building on that foundation of goods and services that we learned about in kindergarten, in our local community, and we learned about in first grade. And now we are taking the information that we've learned about goods and services, and we are going to understand how communities make decisions to ensure that we have access to the goods and services to support the community needs and efforts. What we are looking for students to take away in second grade is an understanding of scarcity and abundance. And this truly is going to be our foundation that they are going to need in order to be successful in fourth grade social studies and so forth onward. So, to prepare for third grade, students have to have that understanding of scarcity and abundance in community contributions. And my hope today is that you see as we go through the standards that this is going to be very prevalent. And hopefully, you will come away with activities and tools that we are able to use to make the implementation very easy so that students do leave second grade with this understanding. So, what are our second grade objectives? Okay, we do have 4 standards, but 5 objectives. In second grade, our students will understand having too much or too little of goods and services and how it impacts the choices that a community makes. In second grade, students will understand the availability of goods and how they have a cost impact. In the same standard, we also want to be able to show that students can explain the costs of making goods within a community. Students in second grade will be able to identify goods and services that are provided by the local and the national government. And lastly, students in second grade will be able to identify the tools, machines, and buildings that governments and businesses use to assist in community needs. Once again, we are a collaborative learning community, so please feel free to contribute standards-based learning activities into the chat as we deep dive through if you have any recommendations or something that you are currently using within your district. And then also, we want you to be able to consider the way that these standards are linked together for the most valuable and immersive learning experience. I'm sure we can all understand the importance of just immersing students within a theme and a topic and really letting them live this out. Our goal is always to provide you with activities that do just that, where the students are truly involved in those decision making activities. So here we go. Our first standard is all about the quantity of goods and services. Our objective that aligns is that students will have an understanding of having too much or too little of goods and services and how it impacts community choices. Our first activity is called something scarce or not scarce. Explain that scarce means not enough of something and not scarce means that you have enough of something. So on a T chart, either read aloud or quietly a variety of scenarios in which decisions have to be made using only the resources or supplies that are available. Have students correctly sort the scenario as to whether there is a scarce or an abundant amount of that item. So this is truly hitting them to make sure that they have an understanding of the definition of scarce and not scarce. So for example, you can give them a scenario. This could even be done as a morning meeting question as they're coming in, a quick few-minute activity, and you're hitting that standard. So, for example, you could write up on the board, a winter storm is approaching, and the town is preparing the plows and sand trucks to help traffic around town. The drivers realize there isn't enough sand to treat all the roads in the town and decide to only sand the main roads and the roads with hills. The question would be, well, is there an abundant amount of sand or is there a scarce amount of sand? Another activity that you could use to really make sure that they have an understanding of these 2 words is how scarcity creates competition. This is truly one of my favorites, where students are divided into equal groups among the class. Each group has been assigned the same task, such as building a house out of Legos. What child isn't going to want to get excited to build a house out of Legos, right? So provide each group with differing amounts, though. Have all the students attempt to build the challenge. Discuss at the end of the activity whether each group was successful. Were all the houses adequate? Were they the same? Were they similar? Did they not have enough or having enough Legos make a difference in the building and the competition results? Again, we're getting the students actively involved and they're seeing out a real live scenario of the difference between having enough and not having enough and the abilities to build great houses. And oh my gosh, not having enough led to a smaller house. It's an activity where they are able to truly immerse themselves. And then we have one last one, not enough lollipops. Explain to the class that you brought in lollipops or another treat for them today. This could even be done with stickers, right? Something that is tangible that they're going to get excited about. The students are going to naturally be very excited because they're getting something. When you reach in your bag, you realize you don't have enough. Of course, you're pretending. Engage the students in a brainstorming activity as to how you can get or source more. Explain that this is what communities have to do when they have a scarce amount of the supplies needed for everyone in that community. And then you can discuss how a town might source more. Have students generate a list of ideas as to when the community might have to source more of a variety of supplies. So, again, thinking about that real life, tangible experience that they are living through, but then making that into a discussion where students are able to think about the broader community. I forgot about one, grocery haul. Depending on the time of year or season, you can choose one item that is abundant or scarce in the local market or grocer. Have students go to the market or grocer and make the determination as to whether the item is scarce or abundant. You can have this done also in photographs if it works, where you can take pictures of the amount in the grocery store if it's not tangible for you to get the class there, or to zoom in if you will. Have the class discuss their findings. If there isn't enough in the store, what should the market or grocer do? If there's too much of the item, what should the market or grocer do? Engage a class in the discussion. So, for example, Halloween candy the week after Halloween. Maybe they have a lot left over, right? Or the lead up to Halloween, maybe there isn't enough. So you can have students engage in real life situations that they can relate to when they go to the store with a family member. Or apples in the autumn. Apples in the autumn are going to be very different than apples in the winter or the spring, right? But how do we eat apples if we don't have them growing on our trees at this time of year? We have to source them and we have to import them to the local area. So this goes back to our understanding of importation and exportation that we learned about in first grade. Okay, we do have a few literary connections that are supportive at this grade level. One is scarcity and infographics, so really showing you pictures. What is scarcity of resources? And scarcity, which is an economics book for little brains. So our next standard really drives the connection in the progression piece that we always say. If they do not have an understanding in goods and services in kindergarten, they're not going to have that understanding and that foundation to be successful in first grade, second grade, third grade. First grade, they're learning about importation and exportation of those goods and services, because we now want to be looking at what is most cost effective in securing and supplying certain goods to meet the community needs. So in first grade, they had the understanding that, well, we need to trade if we don't have it or if we can't produce it. Now in second grade, we are building upon that foundation. In this next standard, we are truly building upon that knowledge to acknowledge that there is a cost associated with getting the materials, supplies, and goods. We can't just magically make them appear. We have to spend money and there has to be a cost associated with it. It is also important to understand that the prices of these items are going to depend on the scarcity and the abundance of the items covered in our last standard. So they truly are all connected. And this is why it's so important that social studies is given the time throughout the day for students and teachers to be able to work in these concepts so that they have those understandings as they move forward. So here's our standard. There are two objectives truly that fit under the understanding the cost impact of goods and services. The first is that they understand the availability of goods is going to have a cost impact, right? The second is that if they're making goods within their community, it's going to cost something. There's a cost impact of that as well. This first activity is called building time. This is truly a wonderful experience if your school or district has makerspace classrooms or just room within the classroom where they can be building and truly doing something tangible that's getting them excited once again, but also has great math connections. So in this activity, students will be able to build their very own neighborhood. This is going to be pulling in their knowledge of whether their community is rural, urban, suburban, that we've already touched on, and the lower grades. And the students are going to be able to either choose which kind of neighborhood they are going to want to build, or to keep it simpler, the teacher can certainly designate which that they will build. The students and then get to engage in a brainstorming activity that what kind of houses am I going to need in this type of neighborhood? What kind of supplies am I going to need in this type of neighborhood? On planning paper, they can plan out their number of houses, the types of buildings, and the amounts of supplies that they would need for each. Students are then able to add up the total cost of the supplies that they need for each house, for the building, and then they have to propose a budget to you. This is where it gets fun. Once the budget is set, you can have students start drawing or building their model neighborhood. But to increase student understanding, you can tell the students, uh-oh, there's a shipping delay and they have a scarce amount of wood available, and explain that the cost has now increased, right? And that the students have to make the necessary adjustments to their budget. You can also discuss how delays and scarcity of supplies have impacted their total project cost. This activity, once again, provides a great math connection and would be wonderful to be done within a makerspace space. And then our next one is called dinner date. For this one, students get to plan a meal for a friend in class. You can provide each student with a pretend $50 and explain that the students will be able to plan their very own meal to make for a classmate. You can have students choose from items from a grocery menu and total the cost of the meal that they are going to make to ensure that they are under their $50 budget. However, prior to them and without their knowledge, you are going to pre-select certain items that there's a scarcity of and inform the students after their selections. You can explain that the amount that each item has increased and have them adjust their total cost. Then you can inform students of other pre-selected items that there is an abundance of, and inform the students that these items are now on sale and their cost has gone down. You'll have some friends in class who are very happy that their that their budget is going to leave them with more money left over, and you're going to have some that are feeling a little bit unfair, right? So you can have students adjust their total cost in the end and reflect on this. You're going to have them reflect and discuss how not having enough or having enough of each item has initially impacted the cost of their meal. There are extension activities that correspond. As a class, you can create a bar diagram of the various items chosen to create that meal. You can engage the class in a discussion as to whether the food would have been sourced locally or imported into the area. You can identify the source of each food. For example, we're not able to grow avocados. We had a wonderful discussion in first grade about importation and exportation. And we can talk about how, well, if I'm going to make a taco meal and I want to have an avocado, that had to be sourced. And you can look at those maps again that we used for first grade and be able to look at where those avocados have come from. You can also engage the class in a discussion about having to import an item might impact the overall cost of their meal in the end. And we have some books that correspond. We love the little economist series. We have What is Inflation? What is Supply and Demand? Once Upon a Milk, A Financial Tale, and Supply and Demand. For our next standard, students will identify goods and services that are provided by the local and national government. So for our next first activity, it's called Government Goods and Services. You can ask students what places provide goods and services in their local community and record the list for all to see. This is a great way for students to get their brains really thinking and turned on about what services and goods that they see on a daily basis. Students might say a fire station, a school, post office, grocery, etc. Explain those that our local, state, and national government provides for, and that some are actually offered by private businesses, and you can discuss the difference. You can also ask the mayor. Invite the mayor or first selectman of your community in to discuss the variety of goods and services he or she organizes with town employees. And this can be done via Zoom or by mail as well. It's a great opportunity to build those community connections. And we do have a set of books that correspond with members of our community who do provide us a service that are all government funded: teachers, firefighters, community leaders, postal workers, and sanitation workers. Our last standard is going to hit about the different tools, machines, and buildings that the government and businesses use to assist community needs. So ask the DPW. Invite a member of the Department of Public Works to inform the class of the various tools the department uses to maintain those parks, roads, and public areas in towns that they love so much. You can also arrange field trips if it is safe and allowed to do so. You could also do a scenes around town. Visit various areas of town. You can do this ahead of time as to make it easy, and photograph the area. So public parks, roads, police station, schools, community centers, town buses, beaches, any green space areas that students know and love that they can connect to. Place the various photographs in different areas of your classroom. You are also going to provide each student with images of various employees, tools, machines, businesses, or other buildings that the local government and business use to, to employ or to maintain and support those goods and services. So have students visit each photograph and place the tool, machine, employee, or building the photograph that corresponds. This is truly a sort, if you will, of making sure that they're able to do a matchup, but it also gets them moving around the classroom and really thinking about, where does this fit in? What correspondences can we find? And lastly, of course, always building on those words from kindergarten and first grade, you will see some that carry over. We have goods and services, income, government, scarcity, abundance, rationing, budget, partner, labor, infrastructure, training, supply, demand, choice, decision, and workplace. And once again, we have our progression model, how you can see that going down from kindergarten, it really builds our foundation in terms of the words and knowledge that the students need to be able to build upon in the consequential grades. So moving down from kindergarten, we do have past, present, community, service, goods. Those carry into first grade. And the same thing, now we added government in first grade, and now we're adding in a scarcity and abundance, and those carry on as well through third, fourth, and fifth grade. That you could use to really make sure that they have an understanding of these two words is